All right. Well, thank you once again for inviting me back to share some fly tying tips and tricks and things. I have a passion for the wet flies. For some reason, years and years ago when I got into fly fishing, and I'm in warm water country here in Indiana, so we didn't have a lot of trout. But for some reason, the wet flies always struck a chord with me. I don't know why. But as I got into this and progressed more and more, obviously for a lot of us, fly tying becomes almost as passionate and active as fly fishing. And I just started going down this path of these old flies and everything. And it's been a lot of fun, not only learning their history, but just the different techniques of how these are tied and put together. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. This is the first fly I'm going to tie tonight. This is a fly called the Undertaker. It's an interesting little fly. It has almost all of your wet flies have some common parts to them. The body being one, some sort of hackle, be a throat or a collar, and some sort of wing to it. Not all of them have tails, and not all of them have ribs or what's called a tip on it either. And then some have a lot more components to them. But these are all kind of standard parts for a lot of these wet flies. But this particular one has an interesting note to it. If you look at it, it's got some black and white in the tail, and it has black and white in the wing. But the way that it's set up, the tail is the black on top of the white, whereas the wing is white on top of the black. And I think the primary reason for that is as this is swimming in the water and it's all flattening out like this, you get what might be a more pronounced lateral line down the fly. But the one interesting note about this, if you look in Ray Bergman's book, Trout, where I got the recipe for this, we were talking about this earlier. A lot of times the information they put in there is pretty sparse. He doesn't tell you like what hackle to use. They might say peacock herl, but if under the hackle listing, it's just going to say brown or something like that. But under the tail for this, it points out that it has black, then white. And there's an order to that, meaning that the black is on top. And then under the column for the wing, it has listed white and then black. At least if memory serves. I might have that backwards, but there's an order to it. So it's not just, white and black, however you get it in there, there's a certain order to it. So when you dig a little bit deeper in some of these recipes, you pick up on some of these things that there's more to it. So I will go ahead and get started here. This is tied on a Mustad 3399. This is a size 6. I like to tie on some of the larger hooks, mostly because I'm throwing these for warmer species. But we were also talking earlier about people who are just getting into fly tying and having some difficulty with things in terms of tying the flies. I used to always, in my beginning tying class, advise people that tie big, even if it's a little elk-hair caddis. Tie it on a size 10 hook. Learn the pattern, learn the materials, learn how it all is put together, and then it's a lot easier to shrink down as opposed to trying to fiddle with, big old knobby fingers on a little tiny hook just to start out with. Now I have that hook in the vise there. I'm going to start with a white thread. This is a Danville 70 denier in white, and that's because of the white wool in the body. I don't want to darken it up. And John pointed out earlier that I tend to wrap the thread around my index finger to anchor that thread. It gives me greater control as I'm presenting it to the hook as to it not sliding around. Some people, that as they start to get that base layer of thread on there, will then snap that off right here. And you can do that if you want. But I got in the habit a long time ago of keeping that tag end out either pointed almost perpendicular to me or just off a little bit to my left. And as I'm winding that thread, it catches that tag end and it slides down right next to the previous wrap. So this is a lot easier to get a nice even thread base on the hook if you want to do that. So with my thread down almost to the very end of the shank here, I'm going to tie in the tail. And again, I mentioned that I already have these slips married and matched up just for expedience in tying the fly. But I'm going to show you how I process these in a little bit and how I put these together. So I'm going to measure these. A lot of people will do about a shank length. Now a shank length is going to be right behind the eye all the way back to the very top of the bend. I like my tails a little bit longer, so I generally will go right behind the eye almost to the bend of the hook. And it's personal preference.
Now, Ian, we had a presentation a long time ago with from Eric Austin, and he talked about different tires in some of these wet flies. Some people liked, say for the tail, the tips together and tips up, and some liked it, tips together, and pointing down.
Oh yeah.
Also, some like it spread apart, so tips opposing and either up or down.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about that when I do the Leadwing Coachman,
okay.
Because I'm going to do those with the wings flat against each other.
Okay.
But there's basically four ways you can tie in these matched and married barbs. It's like you said, it curves up like this, and it's the concave goes out, so it separates. Or I could put these the other way around, and then it's going to flatten out. And then I can also tie it in so they point down. For the most part, I generally go by the pictures. Dr. Burke's paintings in the book Trout are just excellent paintings. And I generally will go by those in terms of how I'm going to orient these. But there are some times where, for different reasons, I might do it different. And that is all personal preference or the requirements for the situation that you need. Now these, unfortunately, the slip that is on your side of the camera, the black and the white tips don't quite meet up as they should. They should be nice and even. I was getting all my camera gear together earlier and having some last minute issues and probably got distracted and didn't notice that. But you can see right here where the white's just a little bit longer. And if you're going fishing, this isn't going to make a bit of difference. So don't feel like, you got to start all over again or something if it's fishing. But obviously, if you're going to present this to somebody or frame it and everything, I would take that apart. And I can show you when I process, when I show you my method for putting the wings together, how I would take that apart and remarry those together. So I'm going to tie those in. And generally, you'll notice I had stopped my thread right here, maybe just past the point of the hook. And that allows me to tie in the tail and then keep moving down the hook shank to the very end where I'm going to tie in the yarn and then start moving forward. By doing that and thinking ahead a little bit, you're going to minimize some of your bumps of thread from where you're tying in a number of materials, especially if this had a palmered hackle and maybe a rib or something back there. It's very easy for a lot of that to get built up. Now the recipe for this calls for just some white wool. This is some white merino wool, and it's up to you what you're looking for in this. If you go with a lamb's wool, I have found, at least in my experience, it's difficult to get lamb's wool that really has been bleached into a nice white. It generally is kind of an off yellow or off tan color. So I went with some merino wool on this one. This is a 4-strand bit of wool yarn, I'm only going to use 2 strands on this. If I were on a larger hook, I would probably use 3 or maybe 4, and if I were on a smaller, say 10 or 12 hook, I probably might even just use 1. But it compacts pretty well, so I'm going to peel out 2 of those strands. I'm going to tie this in. I'm going to tie it in long, let it overhang the eye of the hook. Get a few wraps in there. I'm going to put a little wax on my thread here. And then I'm just going to start advancing my thread forward. I'm going to get about halfway up the body here, and then I'll trim that yarn to about the length of the body. This is one thing with these wet flies you do have to be careful of, and that is that you're leaving enough room right up here for the eye of the hook. It's very, very easy to crowd these eyes, and it took me a long time to basically force myself to stop as I'm wrapping things in and not get one more wrap in. So with my thread up front, now I'm going to untwist this yarn, and I'm going to wrap that in, and this isn't under huge tension here. I don't need this to really be cranked down or anything, but you will notice that I am flattening that out as I wrap that in. It just gives me a nice flat body, but it does have just a hint of segmentation to it. Now, I don't know if that is what they were going for with this originally, because the drawings or the paintings in the book aren't that well defined, but that's what we're going to go with. I suppose you could use a wool dubbing if you wanted to just dub a body on this if you didn't have any wool yarn. And by the way, you don't have to stick with the wool yarn if you don't have some and you want to tie some of these. Get yourself go to Hobby Lobby or Walmart and get some white acrylic yarn. I don't think the fish are going to know the difference. At least my fish don't, so. Okay. There is no rib on this or tip or anything, so I'm going to advance my thread forward a little bit and change over to my black thread. Remember, the white thread was used just because as an underbody, I don't want to darken up any of that white wool. But I'm going to finish with a black 70 denier thread. So here I'm just going to change this over. There's a number of different ways you could do this. You could put in a few half hitches if you wanted to right here and clip your thread. You could put in a quick 2-3 turn whip finish right here. It just secures the thread. You're going to wrap right on top of it. But I adopted a number of years ago. It's just a little bit quicker to let your thread hang. I'm going to take my black thread and just attach it right in front and then start wrapping rearward, get about halfway down, and now I've secured the white thread and the tag of the black. So all in one step, I just got that taken care of. I'm going to wrap back to what's going to be about the back of the head space here, putting a little bit more wax on my thread. I'm now going to tie in the throat. The throat on the Undertaker is just some black hackle. Again, I have not seen, sometimes they will specify a particular bird, Rock Island Red or something like that. But when generally it's just black or something like that, I think it's whatever hen you have, or schlappen or something like that, that gives you that kind of soft hackle look. I think works fine. I tend to favor schlappen just because it's nice and webby material. It's easy to work with. It's large, and it's readily available. So I've already got a couple of bits of this together, and I'll show you also in a little bit how I get the throats together on these. But generally the throat material is going to be about as wide as the gap of the hook, maybe a little bit narrower, and I like to have them back somewhere around the barb. In the throat space back here, you're going to be about halfway from the point to the bend of the hook. The one thing, and if anybody has any opinions on this or knowledge would be great, I find most interesting is you will see certain patterns tied. The Leadwing Coachman is a great example. In the book, it has the hackle tied in as a throat, but I often see people tying them in as a collar. And you can tell from the paintings, the original paintings on these, whether it was a collar or a throat. But so often I find, somebody doing a Yellow Sally or a Dr. Burke or something like that, and they'll do a collar instead of a throat. And I don't know if there's any rhyme or reason to that. There's a time when you would do that or not. But like I said, I tend to kind of stick with the pictures. And so with my throat tied in, I'm now going to tie in the wing. I'm using some goose quill, by the way, for this. It's simply because this is a little bit larger hook. It's hard to get duck feathers where the barbs are long enough for a large size hook like this, so I tend to prefer the goose. Plus the goose, similar to the schlappen, it's nice and long, it's easy to work with. I already have my two slips together here. I've got
Ian.
Yeah.
On your quills.
Yeah.
I've noticed that working with goose quill, the fibers that are really close to the rachis, to the stem, are really stiff.
Yes.
And that really makes it easy to marry or to work with these feathers. But what size do you use? What size feather? I mean, do you use long ones or medium ones or what? Or does it make any difference?
These feathers that I have here, I would say they're 9 to 10 inches long. I get these from Nature's Spirit. They're probably the best ones that I've been getting for a while. Wapsies tend to be much more narrow up here and not as wide down in the bottom portion. So, and part of that I think has to do with whoever it is that's grading these and matching these up, because some companies do a great job of trying to match up two feathers that are similar in their texture, in the barbs, in their curvature and things like this, whereas other people really don't care. They'll just throw in a couple, a left and a right, and that's it.
I got some from a friend of mine who's a hunter, and they're about 12 inches long.
Yeah,
they're a natural goose,
Yeah. Now these, and I'm trying to see if you can see it here in the camera. You'll notice right down here next to the rachis, you have this real shiny part right here. This is very, very thick. All the barbs down near the bottom here are really stiff. These are flight feathers. So these being thicker and much stiffer adds body and support to the edges of the feathers here. I'm not certain there's a name for this portion of the feathers. I point it out simply because as you are clipping out wings, you'll notice that these sections here are getting shorter and shorter. So there comes a time where this is what you're going to be tying in, not this softer stuff right here. So you just have to kind of learn the feathers when you match them up and things as to what's going to work.
That thicker, stiffer portion, it's kind of pithy, and that's where a lot of people have trouble with their wings splitting, is they're tying it in by that thicker portion.
Yes.
And it just puts too much torque on the outer portion of the feather, and it just causes it to split every time. So it's better to use the thin stuff that's past that portion.
Yeah, I've actually, let me see if it shows up better on the white feather. Not really. I've actually tied some of these in, trying to get as much as I can out of these feathers. Tied some of these in right here. You get in this thick portion, and I've actually cut through it with my thread before, because it's spongier. It's just a little bit thicker, and it doesn't collapse quite as well.
Can you marry? Let's say I've got a quill that's 12 inches long and a quill that's 9 inches long. Is there going to be any issues marrying those together?
Oh, no. I'll show you. when
Okay.
I put these together, I can show you that. Matter of fact, I think I have another hackle here, but no. As the only issue is if you're trying to marry some barbs from the right flight feather to the left flight feather, it won't work. So anyway, let me get this wing on here. I've got my two slips together here. What I like to do, and when I show you in more detail, you'll see that I have the one wing that is curved out. This one is going to curve on this side towards you. I'll have that flat on my hand, and then the other wing that I've created, I can just bring right down the edges there and pinch those together and hold on to them, and they don't slip around. The first thing I want to do here is I get the tips evened up. So in this case, I'll take a little bit more care than I did with the tail. I get those tips evened up, but because these are married together, I want to keep that line, that center line, matched up on both of these. And the reason is, you can probably see in the video that the slip on my side is just a little wider in the white area than on your side. And by keeping those two center lines together, you can see if the top or bottom needs to have any of these barbs culled out. So I'm just going to take a couple of these. Often, if I am tying a bunch of these, I will actually clip the white and black a little bit wider intentionally, so on both sides, so that I can go in with the bodkin through both sides and peel off everything that I need. And then I know I have both sides exactly the way I want. But I think, yeah, let me get that light right. I think you can see here that I have the black on my side is a little bit wider than the black on your side. So once again, I'll grab my bodkin and I'll come in here and I'll just cull out a couple of barbs. So now I have them pretty much the same, and that's usually going to be about the gap of the hook. I'm going to place them up on top. Traditionally the tips go about halfway down the tail, but what it also does is it puts the inner part right here at this angle right about at the bend of the hook. And I point that out because sometimes you'll have these wet flies where they don't have a tail. So when you're tying in the wing, you just want to make certain you're getting that lower corner just right out by the bend of the hook. That's the length. So when I get these in place, I'm going to do a pinch and loop right here. What I'm doing is I'm bringing this up here, and then I'm pinching my thumb right here hard to my other finger. I'm going to let the thread hang a little bit and kind of loosen that up so the thread's laying right on it. Now I've rolled this finger forward and I'm pinching both of them. Most importantly, I'm holding the wing back here nice and steady and vertical, because then when I pull this down, it's going to just pull down those barbs towards the front of the hook. Then you end up with that nice little slope right here. Hey, that turned out pretty good. Might be just a hair long. If you wanted to, you can take that out and tie it back in. I'm just going to leave it because I got lucky here doing this live. If you do take that out, though, often you can get maybe about 3 wraps, sometimes 4, if you have to reposition or whatever. After that, I find that wrapping it so many times starts to tear the slips up, and you'll have to make new ones. And sometimes that's the way it goes. I will throw that out there too. Not that I am by any means an expert at these things, but there are times where you get some feathers that no matter what you do, they're just not going to cooperate, or you're just having a bad day. So walk away from it, get another feather, don't fight it. So I'm going to counterspin my bobbin to flatten my thread. This isn't really necessary if you don't want to do this. I like to. It just smooths the head off a little bit. But mine, I always will put one coat of Fly Tight on here, which is a thin alcohol-based cement that soaks down into the thread wraps to solidify the head of that. Then I'm going to come back with 2 coats of a Vineyards clear Celire, and then a top coat of a black Celire on that. If you've got some other black lacquer, that's fine too. For many years, I used Wapsi's black lacquer, and it was very, very good, but then they stopped making it. But the 2 coats of clear will give it a nice, pretty smooth base by the time you get to that black. So when all is said and done with your fly, you end up with just a really, really nice, hold this, let's see if I can't get this up in there, just a nice glossy, shiny head to it. And again, that is also not a huge requirement. So if you're just tying a bunch of these to go fishing with, and you don't want to take the hour or 2 to put some lacquer on them and make them nice and pretty like that, I wouldn't. Just go fishing, have fun. The fish aren't gonna not bite it because it's not presented well. So does anybody have any questions about the Undertaker? I think my other camera died. All right.
That's a beautiful fly.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I absolutely love Bergman's wet flies. I've been working on them for 20 years, and I've got one that I'm close.
They're simple flies. I often find it's interesting to look and see what they were going for, trying to represent in some of these. And like I said, this one being the high contrast in it, it's got to be a bait fish. I don't think this is any kind of an insect. And then again, with the black matching up there, that's going to be perfect for a lateral line or something. But I find it pretty fascinating.
I thought it was fascinating that some of the flies that are reds and whites and have some black in them, a lot of them were actually made to represent a brook trout's fin.
Yes.
I always thought that was fascinating.
Well, shall I move on to the Leadwing Coachman?
Let's do it.
Okay. Now this
is really embarrassed me on my tie from last week.
This is what I refer to as a bread and butter fly. This is the kind of fly, it's easy to put together, and it's not a difficult fly by any means for a lot of people. You can tie them in different ways, but it really, really catches fish. I mean, this is something, if you like swinging wet flies, either for panfish or for trout, you got to have some of these in your box because they're just always so productive. So this is a Mustad 33.99 in a size 8. It's a little bit smaller. And for this one, I'm going to start off with a black thread because it's a peacock curl body. So I've just got the Danville 70 denier in black. I'm going to attach it right behind the eye of the hook. Now, by the way, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but this particular spot right here that's about an eye length behind the eye of the hook, it's actually called the index point. And I think the primary reason is that when you attach your thread and when you're tying things in and everything, you want to look at that as that is the spot that you don't go past. So this is going to be all your head space where the butt ends that you cut will get flattened down into. So if you have this little index spot right here or somewhere right in there that you're comfortable with, you'll know when you come forward, I can't go past that because everything I'm tying in here is going to get, covered up and squished in the head. Proportions can often be a very difficult thing in fly tying, and getting some of that down. And just thinking about little things like that, and just attach your thread further back behind the hook, and then you know I can't go past that. Sometimes that helps. Now I'm using some peacock herl here for the body, and which the original recipe has, you can put a tip on here, a gold tinsel tip on the back, but it has it as optional. I'm not going to put it in on this one. I actually have a video that I did a number of years ago on the Leadwing Coachman where I did put that in, and I also used a wire rib on this, which I would recommend if you're going to tie a bunch of these to go fishing. Do that, because it's going to reinforce that peacock herl and it's just going to make it last longer. But this is following the recipe per the book. So these I've stripped off of a feather, full feather. These are not strung. You could certainly use the strung if that's what you've got, but the full feathers are a little bit fluffier. The barbules on them just fill out a little bit better. But you can also steam them, by the way. Even your strung herls, if a lot of them have gotten flat or whatnot in the package, you can take them out and individually just hold them over some steam and it'll fluff them back out, and they're a little bit easier to work with. I'm going to advance my thread forward about halfway, and then I'm going to trim the peacock herl the length of the body. Notice that I'm trying to keep all of that stuff just a little bit past where I attach the thread. I don't want to go past that. Now, not that because I say that, I certainly do sometimes go past that, and I end up crowding the eye, but for the most part, that gives you a nice visual representation. So then I'm just going to palmer I'm just going to wrap in the peacock herl. If it spreads out a little on you, just reach down, or you can, actually what I think I'll do is I'll go ahead and just use the rotary part of this. I don't often use the rotary part, but I think I will tonight. Goes a little bit smoother. You're just going to wrap that all the way up. Well, I got one or two that actually split in there. Sometimes that will happen with the peacock herl. This part right here is part of the barb actually splitting just a little bit. And as I mentioned, if I'm tying these up to go fishing with, whether it's trout or panfish or whatever, I am putting a rib on that, because all it takes is one fish to chomp down on this and fight a little bit. These peacock herls get all busted up and it's all falling apart, which is no big deal. You know, the hook is the most important, most valuable thing. Just take it and cut it off and tie another one, but can help it last a little bit longer. The throat on the Leadwing Coachman is just a brown hackle. Again, I'm using some schlappen for this. I like the schlappen feathers. Again, they're nice and large, easy to work with. I've already gone ahead and gotten what I call my slips together. You don't have to do it the way I do in slips. You can just get some off and kind of bunch it together and tie it underneath. I'm going to tie those in, and these are just right in front of the body. Again, I want those about halfway down in the throat. On a bug like this, I take it as this is probably tied as some sort of a caddis, and these are meant to represent legs. This is not a fly that I would consider in the category of streamers. Now for the wing on this one, I am going to use some duck. This is just some natural mallard flight feathers that I've got here. And I'm going to take a moment here to switch over and show you how I cut these out to just match up a couple of wings. This isn't marrying them, which I'll show you in a little bit, but this is just to match them up. So when you have wet flies that don't have multicolors to them, they're just a simple, slate like this or white or something. This is my process for going about that. By the way, here's a little tip I learned. Don Bastian has a couple of great DVDs out there on tying wet flies, and in one of them, he actually had a student point out to take your feathers like this and tape them together at the bottom, and then both your feathers are really easy to work with in terms of getting your slips off of, which I'll show in a minute. But I did not do that with the duck, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I've got, this is going to be tied in so that they're flat. They're going to be not flared out. So that means this one here is going to be the one on my side, and then this one here is the other one, but it will come around and match up on the other side. So I'm going to cut my slip here, which is going to be somewhere about a little bit less than the gap of the hook. And then I'm going to cut this one here. Now you'll notice I don't take these off the feather. This is where a lot of people, especially beginners, and I did this too, that's the first thing you do. You take it off and you set it down on the table. Now you got to pick it up from the table and you got to fiddle it with it in your hands as you're trying to get those together and not have the whole thing get shredded up on you. If you leave them attached to the feathers this way, then everything is intact and it's really easy to just take these. This is the one that's going to go on your side. Remember, I don't know if you can see it, but the concave is going to flatten out. I can take that one and just peel it off. Now I pick up my other feather and I just place it right on top and I peel that one off. So I haven't had to shift these back and forth in my hands. They just go on top of each other. I can get the tips evened up like that. I can then see that the tops are even, but I have two extra barbs right down at the bottom. And I know you probably can't see that at that angle, but I got two extras right there. I can cull those out real easy without tearing up my wing. Now it's all set to tie in. So as you can see, by matching it up that way, the wing is totally flat. It's going straight down the back. It doesn't flare out or anything. There are some patterns you could tie these in like this, like Mike mentioned, where it's tips down. I haven't run across a whole lot of patterns like that, but there are some out there, and that's an option if you wanted to do that. But typically these are tied in with the slope going up. Again, the bottom of that slope right there is going to be right about the back of the gap of the hook, or I should say the bend of the hook. Pull that down. Kind of tough this year. This time of year, dry skin, got a lot of hangnails on my fingers. Doing too much kitchen remodeling. Now that one didn't quite go in real smooth because I got one that's cocked up a little bit and I can't get those quite matched up. So I'm going to try. And sometimes this is a nice technique because you have compressed some of those barbs a little bit, and when you tie it in the second time, it will go in just a little bit smoother. And again, if it's a fishing fly, you don't have to put that much energy and everything into it. That will probably do enough. I don't know why that's cocked up that way. So we'll go with that. Bring my thread down to just behind the eye and start working rearward to form the head and cover up all the butt ends. And all you're looking for is just to cover up things and get a nice transition from the base of that wing down to the eye of the hook. Now often, you can probably see in the camera there, I've got just a little bit of that gray hackle wing showing up under the thread. I'll leave that simply because I don't want to bulk the head up anymore. And as I'm doing my whip finish, another reason why I flatten the thread as I'm doing the whip finish, often the whip finish will cover that up. Plus the fact that I will be putting 2 coats of lacquer on here and a third coat that's black. So that little speck will get covered up. I just want to make certain I don't bulk up the head too much, which is very easy to do on these.
Another reason to flatten the thread for a whip finish is, especially on a fly like the first one where you put a lot of work into it, a lot of times when you're finishing up your head, you're doing a lot of wraps, so you're putting a lot of twist into the thread. And if you go to do a whip finish and pull that through, that thread will furl and twist up.
Point.
And as you pull it, a lot of times your thread will break right at the whip finish.
Yeah.
And then your fly starts to come apart and you have no control over that. So
that's a good point. So I'm going to forego the fly tight on this, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I put this clear lacquer on. I get about a half a drop here on my bodkin, starting on the underside, and just start applying that just to all those thread wraps. I will also apply this to just overlap the base of the wing just a little bit. And the reason for that, I found, I had mentioned the Wapsi's black lacquer that I used to use was very good about going on and not bleeding up the wing. In other words, see how I'm just kind of touching the base of that wing. If this were black, a lot of black lacquers will leach right on up into the wing. And even this Solier that I get sometimes will do that. Well, I found if I put these couple of base coats on here, if I just get a little bit right at the base of the throat and the base of the wing, then I'm less likely to get any of that black lacquer kind of siphoning up that material. Again, if it's a fishing fly, I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but so that is a Leadwing Coachman per Ray Bergman's book, Trout. And like I said, if you're going to tie some of these to go fishing with for whatever reason, I would definitely put a rib in there. It just helps them to last just a little bit longer, and I don't think it detracts from the fly at all.
One thing before that fly goes away, one thing I think that'll help a lot of people with these types of wings, when I noticed on both flies, when you were pinching the feathers for the wing, you used your thumb and second finger.
Yes.
And I've seen it before, but a lot of people may not have heard of it. When you use the other finger, it's at an angle and you can't get a good pinch on it.
Right.
So that really helps to hold those wings without them getting twisted.
It does. The other thing is, this is not the best vise in the world for these kinds of flies. Actually, a Regal vise, I think, is probably a lot better, because the let me switch to this camera right here. The Regal vise, the jaws come up at a steeper angle like this, and the whole vise, the head of the vise and everything, comes up at this steeper angle. So being that the pedestal is way back here, you have lots of room to get your thumb and your fingers right in nice and even and along the sides of the hook this way, as opposed to with this vise right here. And I can angle the head on this a little bit. It's a little bit more cumbersome. I'm still somewhat at an angle, but I have learned how to compensate for that a little bit. Any other questions?
That sure looks a lot better than the one I tied last week.
Well, the thing that I find with these is a lot of it depends on the hurl. You really have to kind of hunt and peck for decent hurls, because that's why I went down in the hook size on this, because the hurls that I have off of this particular feather, they're not quite as full. I usually would like to have a little bit fuller body on this, but you use what you have. And
Yeah, when I looked at the picture in Bergman book, it seemed like he had a really fat body.
yes, yes. And there's ways you can get around that. If you really want to, you can easily use some thread or something else as kind
Yeah.
of an underbody, and then
Yeah.
wrap the hurl on top of it so that it sticks out farther away from the hook shank, and it looks juicier.
The other thing I noticed about the Bergman flies is the heads seem to be very bulbous. Is that my imagination or what?
No, you're right. They are, and that's an interesting point that you're bringing up. I had mentioned that book by Ian Whitelaw earlier, The History of Fly Fishing in 50 Flies. And one of the things that's interesting about it is, and a gentleman by the name of Fred Klein, who runs a YouTube channel, Grizzly King Flies, pointed this out to me a while ago. Back in the day when they would tie these, they tied them by hand. They did not use a vise. And if you've ever watched any videos of somebody tying something, one of these flies by hand, it's a very different technique. Here, the wing is the last thing that gets tied on. But in the traditional wet flies, and even Carrie Stevens flies, well, not Carrie Stevens, but some of the salmon flies, the wing was the first thing that's tied in. And they tie the wing in, and they have it upside down facing forward, because then they bring their thread back and they tie their materials in and they bring it up. Because you're holding all of this in your hand, it's a lot easier to then fold that wing back and pinch the whole fly holding the wing while you're wrapping your thread around to finish it off. So that's why they're a little heavier. And it's interesting that this topic came up because I had a follower not too long ago who asked me to do a video on, I don't know if you've ever heard of this fly, the John Story fly.
Yeah.
John Story, the popular version is the dry fly version these days. But it originally started out as a wet fly. And this was way back in the day, and it's just a mallard flank wing in it. But what ended up happening is, after he passed away, his grandson kept tying these, but he had a hard time with the wing. So he started tying them with the wing sticking out in the front, and then the hackles wrapped in as a collar, and it floats as a dry fly. So in the UK and even over here in the US, it has garnered a following as a dry fly. But when you look at it, when I researched it, that's what the issue was, is that back in the day when they're holding these in their hands, the wing has to be around the front here, and you fold it back as you wrap it in. And he just had a hard time with it, so he basically altered the fly, and it still works.
I'll be darned. I never, I was wondering about that, but because a lot of our hackle wing flies, we tie the wing in first.
Yes.
So
it's interesting, and like I said earlier when we were talking before we started, that's what I find kind of fascinating about some of these flies is we have vices to hold the fly, and we have bobbins to hold our thread, and the threads are much finer and stronger, so it allows us to make these wonderful internet ready beautiful flies. But if you look at some of the actual stuff that was tied even 70, 80 years ago or 50 years ago, most did not look nearly as good as the flies that are out there today, which obviously tells you something. Your flies don't have to look great to go catch fish.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we still have time for me to show you how I match and marry these?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Let me change my angle here. I am going to attempt to zoom in a little bit. And please let me know if I am out of frame anywhere in here. There's my focus ring. Okay. There's my focus. Nope, I'm out. Okay. All right. I just want if I can get you in close like this, it's easier to see what I'm doing. I'm not going to do the tail because the tail's much thinner and a little bit harder to see, but the tail is basically going to be about 3, maybe 4 barbs of the white with 3 or 4 of the black on top. Now the wing itself is going to be, the width is going to be the gap of the hook. So you're going to divide that in half. So, and I'm going to be putting white on black. And that's one of the most difficult things to remember, especially about this pattern, is that they both don't go in the same. What I'm going to do first is, I don't know if you can see on this feather right here, but the ends of this are getting kind of ragged. And that's something you have to kind of look out for on some of your feathers. By the way, here's a tip. If you're going to be buying feathers online, if you're going to buy them online, see if you can't find an outfit that you can buy, say 10 packages, and the ones you don't like, send back. Because I guarantee you're going to find some that just don't meet what your requirements are. If you happen to have a good fly shop around, when you go in, don't buy the next batch that's on the peg. Look at all of them on the peg, and this goes for any living material, because there's no quality control over any of this stuff. This is all just natural living stuff. Sometimes you're going to get some that are kind of ragged here, and for fishing that's going to be fine. But again, if you're going to present this and frame it or something like that, then you maybe want to make certain you're matching that up with a nice wing that has a much nicer edge to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the black first, and there's no order in this in terms of right, left, or black or white. But I'm going to cut the black, and I've cut that a little bit wider than what I need. Once again, it's just easier for me. I think it has to do with my old eyes. It's easier for me to just cut a little bit extra out and peel it out than it is to try and get exactly what I need to start out with. Now I'm going to go to the white here. If you have a section of the white like this that's got a little bit of a blemish right here, sometimes you can basically rub that out just by trying to match those up. Sometimes a little steam or something will do that. Maybe even just exhaling on it is enough to get that to straighten up a little bit. Now I'm going to cut the same width out on both sides here. Now it's up to you. You're going to have to keep straight in your head, your rights and your lefts. And what I mean by that is your hook, if this is the back of the hook right here, and this is the eye of the hook up here, the hook has a right side to the wing and a left side to the wing. And I reference it from looking at straight on the hook. So when you're looking at the fly, this side right here is going to be the right side, and this side over here on my side is the left side. You're going to want to make certain this side is matching up with this side here, and then this side will match up with that side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got to have the black on the white on top of the black. So I'm going to take my black off first, using the same technique I did with the duck. I hold that slip in this hand, and now I take the white, I match up the tip of that, now roll my fingers forward to pinch it, and I peel that off. This is going to be the right side. And as you can see, it zips right up really nice and easy. It's a bit wide, but that's okay. Now I'm going to flip this over like this, and I'm going to peel this off this side. So keep in mind, if you're comfortable working this way with your left hand and your right hand, keep doing it that way. Just flip the material over. Don't think you got to hold it with your left hand and now do something with your right hand that doesn't come naturally. If it's easier this way, just flip that over. I'm going to match up the tip, roll my fingers forward to pinch that and hold it and peel it off. Wow, that went better than the wing in the video that I did. So as you can see now, I can just match the tips of those together. Now normally what I do, now I'm going to zoom back out, because normally what I do is, that's still in focus, the first one that I do the right one first. If I can get this up off the table. See, this is why it's the old techniques of putting them on the table is such a pain in the backside. It's so much easier to just hold these. But I will do the right side first and I'll lay it down. And notice it's just off the edge of my vise base, so I've got a nice handle right here to grab. That way, when I get this one done, which is the left side, all I have to do is grab this one right here and put that in my hand. Then I match up that line right down the middle here, put them together, and now I have my wings. And I can tell this is much wider than I need, so I'm going to take out a fair bit of the white on both sides. And the nice thing is now I know both the whites are going to be the exact same width, as long as I have that center line matched up. And now I can do the same thing with the bottom. It may seem a little bit wasteful sometimes, but quite frankly, if you're having fun at the vise and you're tying some flies you like and everything, I guess that's just part of the cost. But
Another thing I heard once, and it really helped me, is if I'm doing the tail where I only need 3 white that are attached to 3 black, it's very difficult to take those few fibers and marry them together. But it's a lot easier to do 6 to 6 and then peel 3 off on both sides.
Yes.
So
yeah, it is very much so. But at the same time, doing this technique, and you don't have to tape these together if you don't want to. I find nowadays it was a nice place to start, but I can keep them straight in my head when I take them out and I have them both on the table. But it does come in handy. But even if you're peeling out just 2 or 3 of the black for the tail and the white, it's so much easier to just peel those out and then put your white right on top. These things, the barbules on these just zip right up. So this technique, doing it this way, is a lot less back and forth in your hands or on the table or anything. I just find that it works much, much better.
And you're right, it is wasteful, but since it was easier, I just always did it that way. If I was doing a tail, I would do twice what I thought I needed just to get it married easily, and then peel off the extra barbs.
Now, the only other thing that I want to show real quick is the throats. When I do the throats, if I'm doing a bunch, let me just try and zoom in here again. If I'm doing a bunch of these for just to go fishing with, to have some fun, I may not put this much energy into it, to be honest with you. But when I'm doing these for the videos or at a fly tying event or something like that, I just put that little extra step in. What I like to do is I like to get a schlop and feather that's fairly solid. I don't want a lot of broken barbs in here and holes and gaps. I don't want any of the fluffy stuff here, and I'm trying to stay away from some of the finer tips right out here. So often I will just come in and cut the rachis right there, peel off any of those. Now these are nice long barbs here that these all zip up really, really easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it as I have a right side and a left side on both of these. So I'm going to get about the gap of the hook again, isolate it out. I'm going to get those perpendicular to the rachis there so the tips are even. I'll peel those off, and then I'll push these together to kind of marry that back up to itself. And then once again, you can't see it, but I'm going to place this down on the side of my vise base. I'll zoom out in just a second. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the other side. This one, they kind of split up a little bit, so I'm going to stroke those a little bit, trying to get those even a little more. I've got one that's twisted there, so I'm actually going to take that out. Go up a little bit higher. I'm going to peel these off, and I just kind of want to keep them flat and together. If you get really good slopping feathers, it's really kind of neat. There's other processes to do this, but it works out really, really well. I know you can't see it. It's right over here, and it's dark on the brown, but that right side's already down, and I'm going to take and put my left side right on top of it, holding it with my finger, and now my right hand can pick up the base, and I have all those hackles just flat next to each other, all ready to tie in as a throat. So those are just a few of the techniques that I've learned over the years to do wings and throats and such like that for the wet flies. The nice thing is that I'm certain there is still a whole lot more I have to learn. That's
Well,
it.
Ian, I'll tell
Any
you,
other questions?
Yeah, your techniques are sure going to simplify my fly tying.
Okay.
That especially how to marry them.
I do have one video I did on a wet fly called the Babcock about a year and a half ago, I think, where I had this two different viewpoints where I showed you how I matched and married those together. Now that I'm kind of getting the hang of doing this a little bit more, there's a couple more flies coming up that I'm going to do that and kind of explain all of this all over again. Matter of fact, I might even do it with this one. I was going to go ahead and do a video on the Undertaker for the channel, and I may just go ahead and make it a long format that I do all of this.
And for those of you that weren't here last week or last month, I mean, look for Dressed Irons on YouTube, and he's got several flies going back a long time that are all really good video quality, very good picture quality on picking which one you want to watch. And there's a whole lot to look at in there.
Absolutely. I was out there today, and it's amazing. And for those of you that don't want to, I put a link to Ian's site in the video from 2 weeks ago when he was here. So if you want to go out and watch what he did 2 weeks ago, and all the links are right there, so for you.
Great.
And I'll do it again this time. So.